All right, good news is always welcome here on Washington Watch, and especially when it has to do with protecting the lives of vulnerable children, including those who are both born as well as those who are yet to be born. Well, this past Friday in Missouri, a St. Louis circuit judge declined a request to temporarily block a common sense state measure to protect children from the harms of permanent and life-altering so-called transition surgeries, and it was a huge victory. The judge's ruling on Friday also meant that the state's law protecting children from gender transition surgeries goes into effect today. Joining me now to unpack this great news is the Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey himself, who fought this battle and was on the tip of the spear. Attorney General Bailey, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you again.
Thank you so much for having me on. Great win in the fight to protect children here in the state of Missouri and across the United States of America.
You're not kidding, and it goes into effect today. It's great to have you on the program on the very day that this goes into effect. Break down for us, if you would, the basic, the court ruling. What does it really mean, practically speaking?
Well, we've got a General Assembly who enacted a statute, a governor who signed it into law. It's Senate Bill 49. It stops puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for kids under 18 and prevents medical professionals from referring these kids to permanent surgeries that ended up with sterilized children. It creates a private cause of action for victims of this system and a 15-year statute of limitations, so they have time to bring their claims against anyone who would harm kids in violation of the law. It also prohibits state taxpayer dollars from going to fund these kinds of procedures and prohibits criminal offenders in Department of Corrections from receiving these kinds of treatments. And so this is a huge win to protect kids in the state of Missouri and provide sanity to our law. The governor signed it into law in July, and no sooner had he done so than Lambda Legal and the ACLU filed suit asking the court to issue an injunction stopping the law from going into effect. We demanded our day in court, tested their evidence, put it under the microscope, cross-examined their witnesses, put on our own evidence, and ultimately prevailed. And I think this is a winning strategy for other states to follow going forward.
Well, I do too, and you've really led the way on this thing, and it's been a great honor of ours here at FRC to kind of keeping us informed as this whole thing has been progressing along. And I guess the big headline in all of this, obviously, is the protections that this offers children from these dangerous surgeries. But you mentioned the tax side of things. Tell us how this specifically is going to affect Medicaid coverage of transgender treatments for adults, not just for children. But what are the tax implications of this?
Well, it certainly prohibits taxpayers from having to fund these dangerous surgeries and irreversible negative health consequences that result from administration of these drugs. I think people need to remember there are 0 FDA approvals for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to treat gender dysphoria. There are 0 clinical assessments showing that these irreversible surgeries are safe or effective in treating this illness. And why is it that the left wants to treat this mental health disorder differently? In no other context would it be okay to administer hormones in place of psychology and psychiatry to a mental health patient? And so why is this any different, especially when there's no medicine or science to back it up? And putting that evidence in open court was really critical to our case. And that's why we called an expert, internationally renowned and nationally renowned experts to testify to that effect. They also testified that kids who receive puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in treatment of gender dysphoria are actually more likely to commit suicide. And so the left's lie that this is somehow gender-affirming healthcare and that there are going to be more teen suicides as a result of this ban is nothing short of a lie. There's no healthcare about what they're trying to do. They're trying to sterilize kids, and we're not going to allow it in the state of Missouri.
Man, that's awesome. I think I heard you also mention that this is going to extend to prisoners. Did you say that?
Yeah, that's right. And people can check it out. It's Senate Bill 49. Again, proud to live in a state where our General Assembly and our governor have taken a policy position stand for what's right and against what's wrong. And we're going to defend it in court, and proud to be the first state in the nation to successfully defeat a motion for preliminary injunction at the trial court level. There's a lot changing in the legal landscape on this. There's a lot changing in the national mood on this issue. I mean, even the New York Times just last week was forced to acknowledge that many of the allegations made by a whistleblower against a transgender pediatric clinic in St. Louis were were proven to be true. And so when you've got a left-wing media organization that even has to acknowledge how dangerous some of these clinics are to kids, I mean, the national mood is shifting in the legal landscape as well. I'd also point out that just last week on Monday, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals also upheld an Alabama statute that's similar, finding that the state had a compelling interest in protecting kids. So this is putting fuel in the fire. We're going to keep fighting for what's right.
That's right. Those two, both of those states, Missouri and Alabama, leading the charge on this. And I've got this here. But tell us about the future litigation, how this impacts potential future litigation for patients who regret the gender transition surgeries they may have had.
Well, and again, that was an important part of the case that we put on in court last week. We called detransitioners to the stand, victims of this system, victims who had been forced into this machinery of sterilization, and wanted them to tell their story about how they became victims and how they want to protect kids going forward and don't want other kids to have to undergo what they underwent. And the emotional side and the trauma of having to live a life sentence under this machinery. And so that was really important to get into the public domain. And it's hard for the media to run from that. And, I think that's really telling. I think that the legal strategy we drew up here is a winning play. We were able to coordinate with other state attorneys general, like-minded state attorneys general that have undergone the same legal challenge to their state statutes in the past and learn from them. They were able to tell us, hey, what worked, what didn't work, what would they have done differently? And we were able to weave that into a winning litigation strategy that we can now hand off. This is a winning play drawn up that we want to hand off to other states. I think there are other states that were waiting in the wings to pass legislation to see how ours fared in court. And the fact that the court declined the injunction, finding that the plaintiffs were unlikely to succeed on the merits and had no irreparable harm from this going into effect. And look at paragraph 10 of the court's order, where the court found that the science on this was contradictory and conflicting and raises more questions than answers. If that's true, then there is no national medical consensus that these quote unquote treatments are safe or effective.
Yeah, that's an extremely important point. And I do agree, this is a model, and I hope that this is going to be used in other states. Real quickly, we've only got about 20 seconds or so. What's the next step in this? Does this go anywhere else further, or is this done deal?
Well, we're going to keep fighting to defend this bill. This is just a preliminary step. We're not going to get into the merits discovery. We want all the evidence that the other side has to justify their lunacy. We're going to put it under the microscope, put it to the test, disprove it, ultimately prevail and be successful. But as of today, it's a safer state because we're protecting kids here in Missouri. Senate Bill 49 is in effect because we were able to successfully defend it in court.